I've always loved my home. It wasn't just any house. It was the place I worked so hard to buy, the one I had dreamed about for years. I had put in endless hours at my job, saved up every penny, and finally made it happen. It wasn't huge, but it was enough for me and my daughter, Nora. We didn't need much, just a place to feel safe and comfortable. But now, it seemed like everyone wanted a piece of it. It all started when my sister Dahlia showed up at my door one evening. I hadn't seen her in months, and the last time we spoke, things weren't exactly friendly. But that night, she came to me with a request. She wanted my house. "It's too much for just you," she said, her voice full of false concern. "Why don't you let me take it? You don't need all this space, and I could really use it." I was stunned. I could feel my pulse quicken as the words left her lips. How could she ask me for this? The house I worked so hard for. The house that meant everything to me? I felt my stomach tighten in anger. "You've got to be kidding," I said, trying to stay calm. "I worked my entire life to afford this place. Why would I just give it up to you?" Her eyes narrowed. "It's too good for you, you know. You're just a single mom. You should let someone who can take better care of it have it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her words stung deeper than I expected. Dahlia had always been the spoiled one, the one who got what she wanted with little effort, and now she was trying to take something so precious to me. But it wasn't just the house she wanted. There was something more to this. "What's really going on, Dahlia?" I asked, feeling the tension build. "Why are you really asking for this?" She hesitated, her face flickering with something I couldn't quite place. Then she blurted it out. "I'm struggling. My boyfriend doesn't know, but I've got debts. Huge ones. And I can't keep up anymore. You don't need this house. You don't even care about it like I would. I could take better care of it." Debt. I'd heard rumors, but I didn't know it had gotten this bad. My heart sank as the realization hit. My sister wasn't just asking for a handout, she was desperate. And in her desperation, she thought she could take everything from me. I felt a mixture of anger and pity. She'd always been reckless, but I never imagined she'd go this far. "I can't help you, Dahlia," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences. I'm not giving you this house, and I won't help you run away from your problems." Her face turned red with frustration. "You don't understand. You don't care about me," she shouted, her voice rising. "I've always been there for you, and you—" I interrupted her. "No, you haven't. You've always just taken from me. You never thought about what I went through. I don't owe you anything." My words hit harder than I expected. She recoiled, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. The silence between us was thick with unspoken resentment and old wounds. I didn't realize how much time had passed until she suddenly turned and stormed out of the house. My parents, who had been standing outside, hurried after her. They weren't saying anything, just following her like they always did, supporting her no matter what. I slammed the door behind them, the sound echoing in the quiet house. My hands trembled as I leaned against the door, trying to steady myself. The argument with my family left me feeling raw. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about years of hurt, of being overlooked and taken advantage of. I didn't want to think about it anymore, so I forced myself to go back to work, even though my heart was still racing from the confrontation. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The weight of what had happened that night was too much to ignore. It was like a dark cloud hanging over me, and I couldn't shake it. The next day, I felt like I was carrying the world on my shoulders. I couldn't get a decent night's sleep. I tried to focus on my daughter, Nora, but my mind kept drifting back to Dahlia's words, her desperation, and the way she'd tried to manipulate me. It made me feel sick. I decided I needed to do something about it, something that could protect me, my home, and my daughter from any more harm. So I took Nora to a church I'd heard about, a place known for warding off evil. I wasn't religious, but something about it felt right. Maybe it was the peace I needed to find after everything that had happened. At the church, I asked for a prayer of protection. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I needed to do something. Nora didn't understand why we were there, but she asked me why we needed protection. What kind of bad things could happen to us? She asked, looking up at me with wide, innocent eyes. Bad things can happen unexpectedly, I explained gently. We have to be careful and ask for protection so nothing bad happens to us. Nora seemed intrigued by the idea, and before I knew it, she was sitting quietly on the floor, her little hands clasped together, mimicking the prayer. I smiled at her, feeling a sense of calm wash over me for the first time in days. Maybe this was what we needed. Maybe it would bring us some peace. The following week, life returned to its usual rhythm. I picked Nora up from daycare, did some shopping, and went back to our house, hoping for a quiet evening. But when I opened the door, something felt off. There was an unusual stillness, a presence that made my skin crawl. I quickly told Nora to stay outside while I went in to check. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept through the darkened hallway, wondering if someone had broken in. I grabbed an umbrella from the stand near the door. If it was a burglar, I was going to be ready. I cautiously opened the living room door, and then I screamed. I don't even know what came over me. I just swung the umbrella wildly, shouting at the figure in front of me. It wasn't a burglar. It was Dahlia. "What are you doing here?" I yelled, completely shocked. "What do you think you're doing?" Dahlia looked just as startled as I was. She was standing in front of the broken living room window, rummaging through my things. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a moment there was silence, except for the sound of my breath coming in sharp gasps. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, I raised my phone. "I'm calling the police. You're breaking into my house," I shouted. "No, I'm not a burglar," she protested, lunging for my phone. I tried to keep it out of her reach, but she grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward her. "Stop it, Dahlia," I screamed. "You're a thief." We struggled, both of us shouting nonsensical things. My heart was racing, and everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. Suddenly, I heard Nora's voice from outside. "Thief! Thief!" she yelled, running toward the house. Before I could stop her, Nora burst through the door, and I heard the neighbors coming over to see what was going on. Mr. Watson and Mr. Allen from across the street were there, wielding baseball bats and golf clubs, ready to help. Old Mr. Carter, the gardener who lived nearby, came through the window holding a shovel in both hands. I couldn't believe it. These were the neighbors I had been friendly with, the ones I had always made a point to greet. In that moment, I realized just how important these relationships were. They didn't hesitate to come to my aid. The sight of the neighbors rushing to my defense was enough to break Dahlia's resolve. She collapsed, defeated, and the neighbors quickly restrained her. I rushed outside to find Nora, who had stopped screaming but was still visibly upset. Mrs. Watson was comforting her, holding her tight. Within moments, the police arrived. Dahlia was arrested, and I stood there, feeling a strange sense of relief. It was over. My family had crossed a line I could never forgive. But it wasn't over for them. The police took Dahlia away, and I was left with a mixture of anger and disbelief. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I would never let anyone, not even family, take what was mine. Later that evening, my parents arrived at my house, their faces pale and filled with concern. They had been contacted by the police. Tears streamed down my mother's face as she apologized. "Please, Dahlia," she begged. "Help her. Pay off her debts. She's in trouble. Please don't turn your back on her." I stood there, feeling nothing but cold anger. "She's not my sister anymore," I said flatly. "She made her choices, and now she has to face the consequences. I'm done." With that, I turned away, shutting the door in their faces. My mother begged one last time, but it didn't matter. They had crossed the line. Soon after, my parents disappeared, and I heard rumors that they had fled the neighborhood, selling their house in the middle of the night. It was strange, almost eerie, the way everything fell apart so quickly. As for my sister, I didn't know where she ended up. I didn't care anymore. Maybe it was the blessing from the church, or maybe it was Nora's exorcism. But whatever it was, it worked. My family was gone, and I could finally move on with my life. From that day forward, Nora continued to mimic her version of exorcisms, and I couldn't help but laugh at the way she seemed to find comfort in something so strange. It felt like a small, strange victory. In the end, everything fell into place. It was as if fate had intervened, protecting me from the people who had hurt me for so long. I didn't need them anymore. I had everything I needed: my home, my daughter, and a new sense of peace. And that was enough.